So, Bodie, I got a question for you.
Shoot.
How many new creators do you think stop creating the thing they're creating because they got negative feedback about the thing that they've created? Welcome back to Beyond the Post with Robb Dunwood and Bodie Grimm. I'm Robb Dunwood.
And I'm Bodie Grimm. And on today's episode, we are going to talk about feedback, and specifically negative feedback, because positive feedback everybody loves, and there's really not much to say. It makes you feel good and you move on with your day. But negative feedback can kind of destroy your enthusiasm if it's not put in the right way. So Robb and I are going to talk about some different ways to deal with negative feedback. Now, negative feedback gets a bad rap because you can consider maybe constructive feedback as negative. So we're going to talk about three different types of negative feedback. The hateful negative feedback, we're going to talk about constructive feedback, and then non-constructive feedback. And actually, maybe we'll talk about non-constructive feedback first, and we'll finish with constructive feedback. What do you think, Robb?
I think this is a great conversation. Now, I need to warn you, Bodie. I need to warn our listeners and our viewers that I am one of those people who suffers from excessive self-confidence. So the way that I'm wired, I might deal with feedback a little different than let's say the average person. Also, man, I got pushing 20 years of doing this, so I got a lot of leather. So I can't wait to get into this conversation, because you and I really haven't done a lot of talking about this particular topic, and we're kind of doing it fresh right here in the episode. So I know this is an idea you came up with. So what made you think about an episode about feedback, particularly negative feedback?
So I recently had an episode where I interviewed somebody on my EV podcast, and she talked about different things that we could do as a world, communities in the world, to reduce the need for mining. And there was lots of different things that they talked about. This was a report that was written by the University of Sydney, I think it was. So it wasn't like just somebody got on the podcast and they just started spouting nonsense, right? This was actually a report generated by people who work at universities and people who attend universities. And I got a piece of feedback back that was, I hate it. I usually like your show, but I really hate it when people try to shove things down my throat. I don't want to live the way this woman wants to live. There was a lady that was on the show. And I did not enjoy this interview. Now, that is paraphrasing, because the comment was a little bit longer than that. It wasn't, I would say, hateful in any way, shape, or form. But it was negative feedback, and it wasn't exactly constructive feedback, because in my view, that's not what she was saying. She wasn't trying to shove anyone's or any of her own ideas down anybody's throat. She was trying to make people aware of, here are some things that we can do to reduce mining. So that's kind of like, after I answered his email, I was like, okay, this is probably a good topic for Beyond the Post.
Yeah, it sounds like it, because when I look at the feedback, if it's, I love feedback. I want people to tell me how I'm doing, how they think I'm doing, what I could do better, what they liked, what they didn't like. I am a fan of that, because I believe that it ultimately helps you. In the case of us, we're podcasters. It helps us build better podcasts. We write email newsletters. I think it helps us write better email newsletters when we get feedback on the consumers, what they actually think. So anytime feedback is constructive, I am a fan of it. Where I tend to match energy sometimes is when there is no constructive nature to the feedback. It is, I just don't like this. I don't like you. I don't like your guest, and you suck. As I said, that kind of commentary doesn't really move me at all. It's like, too bad you didn't like it. I guess we won't be hearing from you again, because you didn't like the show, and people tend not to listen to things that they don't like. It's a different world that we're living in though. Now it's not that people don't just tend to listen to things or watch things that they don't like. They, in many cases, will email or text or send DMs or whatever else to let you know of their level of discomfort or their level of dislike for what you've done. So once again, if it's not constructive, I'm more of a kind of push sand kind of person as compared to when there are things that you can take away that could actually make you or help you improve your show.
So yeah, so let's get right into the negative feedback. There's nothing redeemable about this kind of feedback that will help you get better or even help your show in the way that it's formed or your content in the way that it's formed. Do you remember the Tiki Bar TV on YouTube way back in the early 2000s?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So I was listening to an interview with Dr. Tiki. I don't remember what his actual first name was, but he was saying that he would get this negative feedback, and the person who was interviewing him said, well, do you just delete it? And he goes, no. He goes, I respond to every piece of negative feedback with the goal of making them think I'm a human, not with the goal of making them feel bad, but with the goal of making them know that I'm out here. I read what they had to say, and it has an effect on me. Now, I think most people could be real awful online, but in private life, I don't think most people are awful. I don't think your online behavior has anything to do with your, most people, not everybody, has anything to do with how you interact with people in the real world, in real life, because there are social norms that we have set up. The social norms on the internet are a little fuzzy sometimes. This was before I was even creating content when I heard this interview, and I was like, that is a great way to handle this. So early on in my podcast, I used to stutter a lot. The audio quality was terrible. There was so many things about it that was terrible. I didn't fully understand the subject I was podcasting about. I was still new to that, so I couldn't even go into great detail about anything because I had nothing to base it off of. And I would get these horrible emails written to me, and I would write back like, I'm new at this. I don't feel comfortable on mic. I stutter. I don't have the equipment or know-how to upgrade the sound or upgrade the audio quality. I'm trying. Give me some feedback back. And Rob, you and I were talking about this before we started recording. Most of the time I would get a response back with, hey, they would never apologize, or at least I can't remember they apologized. But I would get a response back with, hey, I really like how you do this. There would be a positive response back because I called them on their negativity. Now, did I shame them for it? I did not. I just explained, hey, here's where I'm coming from. I'm really sensitive about my stutter, and I am. But as soon as you make yourself human to those folks, sometimes they don't come back and they won't respond. But for me, in my personal experience, most people have responded to those type of emails, and they respond with something positive. And that's where we can work on a better solution. Maybe there is something about my show that they don't like, but they can't necessarily express it, so they just come out with a bunch of vitriol that isn't helpful for anybody. Now, I'm not saying everybody should do this because you're kind of opening a Pandora's box. My full-time career, the biggest part of my job is roasting each other at the kitchen table. So I have a high tolerance for insults, and not everybody does. So this may not be a solution that you want to do. How do you deal with it, Rob?
So we talked about Tiki Bar TV. That was very, very early YouTube. I think today we are in a different world of just the level that people, the kind of content that people will put out to let you know their displeasure about something on the internet. That's different than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It really is. So I keep that in mind. That being said, I learned this, it was either high school debate class. It might've been, in college in debate or something like that. But there is this thing you can do. And you were kind of mentioning it. If you basically have someone who lashes out at you and you can see their point. Maybe they expressed it very, very strongly, more so than what you would like, but there is a point to be had in there. And if you agree with their point, or at least concede that, well, you have a point, I'm going to acknowledge it. You can do this thing to where it's kind of like, if you ever seen like a puppy or a young dog, I guess that is what a puppy is. You have a young dog that it rolls over on his back and has got his paws up, and you can go and you can tickle it. It's basically, it is letting you know that, it's safe for you to play with me and I'm playing with you. And if you are in a situation where you kind of do that, you show your underbelly to someone who is giving you negative feedback, and they still keep hammering the point. And it's kind of like, you did this thing and it was really, really wrong. It's like, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. We're going to try to get better. Well, you should have never did it in the first place. It's like, you're right. We're trying to get better. The third time, if they come back around, when I'm basically showing you my underbelly, and it's like, you're right. I'm agreeing with you that we could have done this in a different way, or that we're going to try better for you the next time. But for me, by the time we come back around for the third time, I am no longer stripping line. I'm basically going to start matching energy at that point. So what I have learned is, I don't want to get into Twitter wars, or I should say, I guess they're X wars now. I don't want to spend enormous amounts of time in comments going back and forth with folks on things that simply won't matter. If someone generally is that upset with content that I've put out, well, they're no longer a listener. So does it make sense for me to continue to engage with someone who is not, who is not accepting of, you know what, you're right, that's a good point, we're going to try this better next time, let us know what you think, and they just keep coming with the whip and you're just cracking because you did it wrong the first time. I don't respond well to that. So I generally just tend not to respond. But that, once again, that is just a me thing. That is not necessarily an everyone thing.
Yeah, it's important to mention that there's a difference. Like Rob said, there's a difference between somebody who is just like, this was a terrible episode, and you're like, yep, gotcha, noted, we're going to do better. And then the person who just wants to continue to argue, those people you're never going to make happy. Never, ever, ever, ever. I genuinely don't know why you would want to waste your energy. And even 3 times after the second time, it was like, this isn't the show for you. So,
I think this was a Mark Twain quote. I hope I'm not misquoting Mark Twain, but I've heard this, and it's about stupid people. And it's like, you never argue with stupid people. They will, what is it? They will beat you with experience, they will drag you down and beat you with experience. You just cannot win those type of arguments. And I feel the same way when you start getting into the comment wars, where you're just going back and forth, because you're not going to resolve anything. And in the case of that person, they actually may be a troll. What they're getting from is the fact that you're engaging with them and they're getting your blood pressure raised. That may be their whole goal. Their goal may not to be constructive. Their goal may simply be, can I get a rise out of this person that creates this show? So, I've been doing this for a while. I tend not to get into too many of those types of spats any longer. There was a day when you could take me there. I think just, maturity and age have kind of calmed me down on that. But those aren't the only type of comments that we get. I believe that another nature of the way you may get negative feedback is that someone is telling you, hey, this did this, or you said this thing and it affected me this way, or you did this, or you did not do that, and this is why it's problematic. And they actually give you explanation. It's not good. It doesn't make you feel good, but there is at least a constructive nature to how something was delivered. And I think you and I both would probably treat those type of comments in a different way.
Yeah, so that kind of even goes back a little bit, Rob, to the interview that I had in the negative comment. And listen, I don't have any. I highly doubt this person listens to this particular show, but I don't have any problem with his comments. The interview made him feel a way, and when you have those visceral reactions, your feelings are real to you. It's not maybe necessarily real to everybody else around you, but they're definitely real to you. So I want to respect the person who left the comments, as well as my guest. But the person who left these comments lives in a rural area and probably, drives a truck, is got to be interested in EVs because they're listening to my show. So I could see why the thought of, some organization coming in and making a community where he lives in, I'm not going to out where he lives, but he lives in a pristine, rural community that's quiet and the kind of life that he wants to live, excuse me. He wouldn't necessarily want somebody building a community right next to that life that he built. I completely get that. That makes sense. So in the way that this person left the negative feedback, I didn't feel like there was much validity on not that there wasn't validity to it, because I don't want to minimize his comments. I didn't feel like there was much in the way that could have been changed. I disagreed with his viewpoint, is what I'm trying to say there. But one thing that is maybe I can be put on me, as you know, Rob, I do a lot of editing, and I edit for time and I edit for clarity. And I did edit that podcast. So there may be things that my guest said that I edited out. And maybe that was some clarifying information that might have been needed to be put into that, back into that interview. Now, I'm not going to go do it. It's out. Nobody's going to go back and listen to an interview twice to get 30 seconds of updated information. But I might have edited in a way that kind of showed my viewpoint, and maybe that was kind of what made him feel that way. Not necessarily the interview, but maybe the actual way that I edited it.
I understand where you're going with that. And there are times when I will see someone, you're making a good point, I just disagree with it. And sometimes it's okay for me to lose a viewer, to lose a listener, simply because I hold a viewpoint that they disagree with and they can't get past it. That's okay. There's 7 billion people, or actually more. It's almost, I guess we're pushing closer to 8 billion people in the world. You're not going to have the same viewpoint as all of them. And as a content creator, if you are trying to please everyone and make sure you're creating a show that everyone is going to absolutely love and no one will ever give you any feedback for, you're going to have the most bland, boring show that will have very few listeners, viewers, or if it's a newsletter, very few readers. If it's social media account, very few followers, because you're not creating content where there is potential for conflict. So it's just vanilla. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go out here and, create, clickbait type content. That is not what I'm saying. But there are times when in the creation of my content, I'm going to take a stance that may not be popular, and that's okay. It may not be popular, but it's my stance. And because I'm creating the content, I feel okay putting it out there, and then we'll accept that. Well, I don't agree with this. I understand that you don't agree. I'm not changing the show because you don't agree. I just, I understand that you don't agree, and I acknowledge that this may not have been the content for you. So those are the kind of comments that I will actually respond to. There are ones, however, and they're just beyond the pale. And they just don't delete. I just simply don't look at them. In many cases, they will automatically get flagged as spam or get flagged as a troll type comment and just go to an automatic bucket. And I very rarely even look at that bucket anyway. So I always am willing to have conversation as long as the conversation is productive. When it gets circular or it gets to the point to where you just disagree, you don't like the guest that we had, does not mean I'm going to pull the post down, because there may have been other people who have liked it. I gave you an example when we started talking about this, Bodie, was that I have a show that has a fairly long intro. The intro is almost a minute long. And for every person, it's not regular, but for every person says, wow, your episodes are great, but the intro is just too long. I got to hit my skip button twice to get past it. I just don't like doing that. for every email, for every message, for every comment that we get that says that, there's probably 20. I love your intro. Where did you guys get that intro done? I love how you've got all these clips of what was done in your intro. So I think sometimes you just cannot please everyone. And if you're trying to, you're going to have some long sleepless nights, because you will never be able to create compelling content and please everyone with it. Those two things are mutually exclusive. You cannot create content that everyone will love and that everyone will listen to. It simply can't work it shouldn't work that way. You're not able to create content in that form or fashion. So, having done this for as long as I've been doing it, I have definitely built up some tough skin. I would think things that people say today that maybe if they said them 18 years ago, I might have reacted differently 18 years ago. So that there is part of that, but I do not believe that you as a content creator have to lose yourself when you're creating your content because you're worried about how someone else is going to take the thing that you've created.
Yeah, that's a good point. And while you're saying that, Rob, I'm kind of reminded that you get the audience that you deserve. So if you're out there and you're just trying to do a bunch of clickbait, and you are monetizing off of chaos, then you are going to get a chaotic audience, and they are going to think they can say things to you that they wouldn't say to normal people in polite public. They are like, their goal is to match your energy. Maybe that works for you. It's certainly something that some creators do, and some other public figures do. And that seems to work for them, but it's like eating empty calories. Eventually you're going to pay for that. So if you're creating a show and you're putting your, you're not trying to cause controversy, but you're not staying away from controversy, and you get a negative stray comment here or there, don't let that stop you from being a content creator. Like, Rob and I post our emails at the end of the show, and we put them in the show notes. I'll throw it out here. Shoot me an email. Get a negative comment, shoot me an email. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how to handle it, whether or not it's something that you should be concerned about. Like this, the creating is kind of lonely sometimes. Rob and I have each other to bounce things off of. We have other people that we are in podcasts with. We have a creator community. So if we come across some of this stuff, we can say, hey, look at this comment, and we can laugh about it. Or we can say, is this valid? Because maybe I'm missing something here. And, we'll do that for you. Like, I don't want to volunteer Rob's time, but I'll do that for you. The whole point of this podcast is that we're creating together, The other thing is, because we're kind of coming up on our time here, Rob, let's talk about constructive criticism, because this can hurt, depending on the kind of person you are. This constructive criticism can hurt. It can be delivered in a way that isn't always the nicest way, or you take it as not always the nicest way, but you can also get like valuable information out of this.
There's a couple ways that I look at constructive criticism and where I get it and where I take it from. So, fortunately for me, for us, Bodie, I think that we have created communities in ways around our content, and there are ways to become members of those communities. And I'm just going to be honest. If you are a member of my community and you are rocking with my content week after week after week, I'm going to be much more receptive to your criticisms, to your, to your praise, to your criticisms, to your, it was a great show or wasn't a great show, simply because you're part of a community and you are showing up every week, as compared to people who are showing up anonymously. Now, on most of the content that I create, I don't easily give the opportunity for someone to just comment in a way where they are completely, what is the word? They're completely anonymous to me. I don't. So if you go to like my website, I don't have comments open on my website because they just become a bastion of just nastiness that I just don't want to have to deal with. So I've done things like, well, we'll create a Discord community. And you can get some pretty caustic stuff inside of a Discord community. Don't get me wrong. But generally, when the person goes through, okay, I want to go join this community, they're not joining it to be a troll. They're generally joining it because they want to be a member of the community. So the fact that they, are coming in and they're a part of the community, I tend to look at that type of, those types of criticisms a little bit more. Basically, I'm going to give them a few more points than I would just give someone random off the internet that I don't know. They don't know me. And they just happen to hear one thing that was said by myself or by a guest or by another host on a show that they just didn't like. And now they're railing against it. I don't give that type of commentary as much credence as I would if it was someone in a community that said it, because it's just like this. There could be someone across the world that says, I don't like your show, Bodie, but if you don't know them, you don't really feel bad about it as if it were somebody who says, hey, I've listened to your show. Dude, I just don't like it. That means something when it's someone that you know. So, I kind of look at, the constructive criticism. I definitely want that. And I ask for it from people who I know are listening to the show so that they can actually give me constructive criticism. You can't just listen to one episode and say, you're the most terrible podcaster in the world, because it may have just been an episode you didn't resonate with. There's hundreds of others maybe you would have if you had the opportunity to listen. So that's kind of one of the takes. It's not my only take, but that's one of the takes I have on just even the type of constructive criticism that I'm willing to pay attention to.
The folks that send you constructive criticism, there's two points to this. One is that constructive criticism can be sandwiched in a bunch of really just negative stuff that is just them spouting, and then there might be a piece of constructive criticism in there that you could use. You just kind of have to decide for yourself how you want to deal with that. But that constructive criticism, when you respond to the person, it's like, tell me more about this. Give me some more of your thoughts on this. Maybe you make a change, maybe you don't. But those create invested listeners. Like when somebody says, hey, I think you should do this, this, and this. And you if you probe them and ask them why, and then you explain your side of it, those people feel more invested in your show. I had somebody once, because my EV show is a modified version format based off of Daily Tech News show. Like I have an EV section, I have a Tesla section. In the EV section, I start with short stories that you can just talk real quick, and then I go into the meat of it. And then I have a break, which is usually a Patreon break. And then I talk about Tesla, and I do that, or I just repeat that format for Tesla, right? I had somebody say, hey, your episode title was whatever it was, the Cybertruck or whatever. You waited until the very end to talk about Cybertruck. I listened to this episode so that I could hear about the Cybertruck, and you waited till the end, put it at the front. And I said, yeah, but I want people to listen to the entire show. Like, that's a teaser. That title's a teaser. It's there so that you listen to the entire show. I don't have a specific episode naming convention that I do. Sometimes I name it something funny. Sometimes I name it what's in the show. Sometimes I name it the main topic of the show. But so when I replied to him and I explained why that was, he goes, yeah, I'm just not going to listen. And it's like, okay, good luck. Like, I think that's great. This isn't your show. But for me to take the thing that everybody would want, or most people would want to listen to, and just put it at the top so they can stop listening, that's a different show. That's not my show.
I'm going to give you a piece of constructive criticism that I received very early on in my podcasting career. And it came from Allison Sheridan from the No Silicast podcast. She was a guest of ours earlier this season on Beyond the Post. And this is very early on. We're talking about 2008, 2000. This is probably maybe 2009, 2010. And she sends a message to myself and my co-host. And I'm paraphrasing because, like I said, this is something that was written, over a decade ago. But she's like, I love the three of you. I love the content that you guys are creating, but I simply can't listen to it. You are clipping all over the place. It sounds horrible. And she was right. It did. But she didn't stop there. She was like, here is a application called Levelator. It's free. You can download it. And then she sent a guide, a document that she created on how to use it specifically for our show and clean it up. And then she sent a file that she had downloaded. She basically downloaded our episode, ran it against Levelator, and then sent us back and said, hey, listen to the difference between using this tool and not using this tool. That's how I met Allison Sheridan. And that is arguably the most constructive criticism. It was the most constructive and useful criticism I've ever gotten. And it was very, very early on in my career, because she didn't just complain about it. She said, I love your show. I love what you guys are doing. The problem is I just can't listen to it. You're killing my eardrums. Here is how you fix this. That kind of I don't expect most people, because Allison isn't most people. She is exceptional. This is the kind of person that she is. She literally probably spent, I would say a good half hour to 45 minutes reproducing a section of our show to show us that if we use this tool, this is what you could sound like. And as I said, Bodie, that was so long ago that the tool Levelator, I don't think they've made that tool probably in 7-8 years. It's been a minute. So we have to go back a long time to when even that tool was available. But those are the kind of things that are very, very constructive. As I said, I'm not expecting anyone to become an audio engineer to help you fix your audio. That is, you have to be an Allison Sheridan to do those kind of things. But when you can offer someone a piece of commentary, and you don't start off with, you suck, you're terrible. It is like, hey, I like what you're doing, but if you did this, it may land a little better. If you said it this way, it may land a little better. If you said this, it may not be, ableist in one way or another. Those kind of pieces of commentary are, oh, you know what? I never thought about that. That's a very good point. Let me, I don't want to just offend people and not even realize that I'm doing it. Let me fix that about the way that I deliver this content. Those type of comments, to me, are welcome and very, very helpful in helping someone to grow and put out a better piece of content.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to echo the same thing, like I met Allison in 2019. And if you were to track the quality of my podcast before I met Allison and after, there's an exponential improvement after, because her and her husband, Steve, are both very good at giving constructive feedback and then also actionable items that help you get better. So,
if you get some if you get some constructive criticism from Allison Sheridan and has anything to do with audio or anything like that, you want to pay attention to it, because I said it probably didn't just come as a random comment. It probably came as a comment along with a PDF, along with a zip file with some examples of before and after, if you were to fix the things that she was talking about. She is absolutely brilliant in the way that she helps people improve their audio. And she just does it because she just likes good content. It's like, hey, I like good content. I like to listen to. I can't listen to the clipping, so here's how you can make that stop.
And she does with everything. Her and her husband are both engineers. Allison's a mechanical engineer, Steve's an electrical engineer. And the things that they do, like one time, Rob, and this is off track topic, but one time they were telling me about how they put a cup of water in the microwave to see if it boils faster in the middle or if it's on the sides. And they had a whole spreadsheet. This is what they do as a couple. And it's no different. They put that same amount of love and energy into trying to help other people out, even people they don't necessarily even know.
They are two of the most curious people that I know. And it's like, I want to know the answer to this. So let's go do tests and figure it out. Like I said, that is, if you ask me, about curious people and people who like to figure things out, Allison and Steve come to mind. But anyway, Bodie, is there anything else we want to talk about as far as constructive criticism before we move on?
No, I think that's it, Rob. The biggest thing about this is don't take any of this stuff personally. Like, even though you put a lot of yourself into your show, and to a varying degree, you let people know about what's going on in your life. Like we talked to Lamar, he's like, 10% of what's going on in my life, but he's a creator that's on the internet almost every single day. Allison, same creator, a lot about Allison's life. If you listen to Allison's show, about her grandchildren, about her kids, about her friends. she puts all that stuff out there. So you're putting yourself out there. You're making yourself vulnerable. If you get a negative comment, or you get some negative feedback, and you're like, man, this is really affecting me, don't worry about that. That's okay. It's their problem. It's not your problem.
Yeah, that is the big thing for me. If you are a creator and you're putting stuff out for public consumption, and when you really think about it, it's not like we're going back to the early 80s to where you wrote a book and you put a book out and you only would see the people who took the time to write you a letter to tell you about the book that you could read, which people clearly they did that back then. Now it takes no effort for someone to give you feedback. And because of that, you're going to just get trolls. There is trollish behavior out there. And my recommendation is don't let those folks win. Don't let them get you to a point to where you don't want to create because you don't like what someone else is saying. But delete and block are wonderful features inside of pretty much every social media platform and email application that you could, imagine. Block and, block and delete. This is something that, I know a lot of people who are creators, and I've seen people who spoke on this. It's like the things that people will say to me because they just disagreed is crazy. And if I were to go and read all those comments, it would affect my mental health. So I just don't. I just block and delete. And I leave the comments to where, not everything doesn't be, roses and cookies. But if it is constructive and you're not attacking me personally or attacking me as a person or as who I am, I can roll with you. But anytime it moves into, personal attacks, or you simply are not making any any points that are, any cogent points, you simply are just complaining because there's someone on the other end of the social media platform that is willing to listen to you complain. You just don't engage with those folks and move on, because those folks are never going to be your tribe. They're never going to be the people who are following you that would support you and actually give you constructive criticism anyway.
Yeah. Rob, I'm going to build in public here a little bit. I think this topic is important enough. Maybe we don't put any of it behind the paywall. I mean, obviously our Patreon supporters will get the beginning that, the more informal beginning and the more informal ending. But maybe we just leave this all up for everybody to listen to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Rob and I have email addresses. It's Bodie, BODIE, at 918digital.fm. I got that right. Rob's is Rob with two B's at 918digital.
BeyondThePost.fm.
Did I say 918 digital? I'm so
you
sorry.
Did.
Okay.
So, Bodie,
I was so proud.
So
right, why don't you do that part, Rob?
I know that the email you get, everything goes there. But yeah, you could do Bodie at BeyondThePost.fm. You could do Rob at BeyondThePost.fm. Why can you do that? Because this show is named Beyond the Post FM or .fm, and we created email specifically for the show.
Goodness gracious. I'm so dumb. Sorry about that, Rob. I say it too much. And we also have a Patreon, which is beyondthepost.fm/Patreon. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And patrons, stand by, because Rob and I are going to discuss my inability to remember my own email address for the show.